Hello and welcome to Dads of Football. We're here talking about Russell Wilson, who's about to be let go by the Denver Broncos. His release is upcoming, it's pending, it's going to be in the books very shortly. So, the big question is for this video, what's Russell Wilson's NFL future? Josh, what is your best guess is going to happen to this guy? Where's he going to go?
It's amazing because just as of 2020, he threw
Mhm.
for 4,200 yards. He threw 40 touchdowns. Heck, you can even go back to 2021. He threw for 3,100 yards with 25 touchdowns, 6 picks. Now jump ahead to 2023. He throws for just over 3,000, 26 and 8, and Denver's ready to move on to give him his 39 mil and move on. It's kind of an interesting take on what happens to aging quarterbacks, right? He's 35 years old. He'll turn 36 during the next season.
And
Um,
I think a special place has to be thrown onto the front office of the Denver Broncos.
oh yeah,
This might be just one of the worst decisions, just top to bottom. First of all, giving up what they gave up for him, which were how many? I'm trying to think of how many first round picks that they give up for him. Two first round picks, two second
yes,
round picks, a fifth round pick, Noah Fant, Drew Lock. I mean, they threw they got they got Fant. They gave up all those guys, and again, people that could have been quality players, but they gave
right.
up so much, thinking that this guy was going to be at least an answer for the foreseeable future. I mean, I don't know how much they really thought they were going to get out. Obviously, they thought at least 5 years that they were going to get
Right.
out of him. So this speaks to how terrible that front office is, and then just to allow them to just, all right, let's just cut the cord and move on
Yep.
with no real viable great option as a quarterback.
I think on top of the fact that it just when when everything happened, when the trade happened, you look at it and go, okay, this is interesting. Pairing him with some talented young receivers, a solid backfield, like seemed like things were going to be moving in the right direction. And then almost immediately, right, his first year he throws for 3,500 yards, 16 touchdowns, and 11 picks. By far, his worst output of his career. Right, a man that's thrown over 300 touchdowns. 2022 is terrible. 2023 bounces back. He looks
Yeah.
better. However, they're ready to move on because they're thinking younger, stronger, fine, whatever. But here's a guy who not too long ago was considered, especially if you look at his run from really 2013 to 2020, as dynamic. I mean, he was considered in the conversation of your top 3, 4 guys, and almost immediately, clearly he was uncomfortable there. There was obviously mishandling. You gave up so much, and now you're looking at and going, okay, next week free agency starts, and you're ready to move on Monday. You're going to drop him
You
on
know,
Monday.
I
Go
think
ahead.
Sean Payton just handled this terribly. I thought that he came in and he wants to just clean house, but it's like you're setting your team
Yeah.
back so much money. You have a guy that's there that, yeah, you're gonna have to pay him 39 million anyway.
Yep.
You've already gotten the cap hit this year of $85 million. So
Yep.
your team is screwed money wise for the next year or year and a half or 2 years, however you want to look at it. Um, to me, that's what I'm looking at, is that you screwed this team. And I think what they have, the 12th pick in the NFL draft, who are you really going to get there that
13,
you're
12.
12th, right? So who are you
Yeah.
really going to get there that's going to be the guy that you think is going to give you better production than Russell Wilson, who even at his worst is still a top 20 quarterback?
Right.
Um, and last season, again, looking at his numbers, still able to throw for 26 touchdowns and 8 interceptions with
Right.
not great receivers, with not a great team. I give him all the kudos there because he played pretty admirably. As you said, he bounced
Yeah.
back. And then to make the decision that we're going to cut him off and we'll see what we do. I mean, I don't know who you get at that 12th position. If maybe a McCarthy's there, if that's what they're thinking. Shoot, I don't even know. Bo Nix, Michael Penix, are they going to be better
Right.
in their first year than Russell Wilson? Or could you keep Russell Wilson there? Yes, you're going to have to pay him money, but at
You're
least
paying
maybe
him
he could
anyway.
he could be your bridge for a year.
Yeah.
I guess they're
in
looking at
so
the guaranteed money for the next year too. I get that,
yes,
but I don't know. He still might be worth it to me.
in so many ways, it seems like things were mishandled, right? Whether it's the Denver front office, whether it's Sean Payton, or maybe it's just Russ Wilson. But you start looking where he may end up, right? You start talking about the places where he fits, and you and I have talked about this a little bit the last few days. All the rumors about Atlanta, then all the rumors about Pittsburgh, and you're not sure where he's going to go, where Kirk Cousins goes first, maybe matters most, because whoever gets Russ Wilson isn't going to pay him a lot. And the thing that you and I were talking about before we started tonight was, that there was rumors 2 days ago on the Raiders wire that maybe he ends up in Oakland. One, that does not seem like a situation that's going to be great. With Luke Getsy there now calling the offense, is that really a place that they're going to be able to use an aging athletic quarterback? But also throw in the fact that why keep him in the AFC West? Why, if I'm Russ Wilson, why do I want to stay in the AFC West where I'm playing against Patrick Mahomes twice a year, Justin Herbert with Harbaugh behind him now? None of that seems to make a tremendous amount of sense to me. The place that I find most fascinating is Minnesota. If Kirk Cousins moves on and Minnesota wants to bring him in for very, very, very cheap because he's already got the $39 million, they can give him the veteran minimum. At least that's what has been talked about.
Yep.
You go there, you pair him with Justin Jefferson. You go there and you pair him with Jordan Addison. You pair him with some talented running backs, a solid offensive line, and a coach that seems to know how to get the best out of quarterbacks. I mean, Kirk Cousins' output in Minnesota was spectacular. I also think you take him out of the attention that you receive in the AFC West. You put him in the NFC, where let's see what happens with the Bears. But you've got the Packers, you've got the Lions, but with the exception of Jordan Love and whoever the Bears end up drafting, doesn't he hop in and put himself in a position to lead a team where he doesn't necessarily have to do anything more than he even did this year when he completed 66% of his passes, and now he's throwing to Justin Jefferson, he's throwing to Jordan Addison, he's throwing to a bunch of weapons that are young and gifted and probably going to bail him out. I mean, the thing that they thought they had in Denver was some receivers that were exciting, but we obviously watched how that played out this year. So Minnesota to me is a fascinating one, because then they could draft someone, whoever it may be, and he becomes the bridge for whoever that is at a very, very low price.
I could see where you're coming from on that. And I get though why people are saying Pittsburgh being the front runner, because they're the team that's going to need a temporary quarterback, at least for a year or two, because you can't go with Kenny Pickett.
No.
So they need something. No. If it's not him, it's not going to be Cousins. I just don't think Cousins is going to go there. If it's not going to be, Justin Fields, you really don't have any options, because at 20 in the NFL draft, they really have nowhere else to go other than a Russell Wilson. And you get him cheap, as you said. You hire him for the league minimum of $1 million it is, which isn't it's like I want to say it's less than $1.5 million at this point.
And I feel like Omar Khan, specific to obviously back, staying with that Pittsburgh idea, Omar Khan's said, we have full faith in Kenny, right? That's what
they don't. No,
he said at the NFL scouting combine, right?
You have to be blind to have full faith in Kenny Pickett.
And to me, that smacks of smoke, right? They're throwing that out there, thinking, maybe somebody bites on a young Kenny Pickett, and we put faith in him. And to me, Pittsburgh again makes sense, clearly makes sense, but why not? You know what they're able to get out of every player they bring in there. Mike Tomlin, for me, is top 3 coach in the NFL. I love the guy. I understand they haven't won anything in a long time, but look, I mean, the guy gets the most out of all of his players. Why not move on from Kenny Pickett? Why sign Russ Wilson, although the cheap factor works? Why not take a shot on a young quarterback that they're going to reset the clock on? If you're Pittsburgh.
At 20, who are they going to get, though?
That's true. Maybe Pratt. in the second round.
Oh no! Oh no! 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 You can't take a
third.
chance on it. I don't like Pratt. I
Yeah,
not
you
that
know
where
I
you think you
do.
not where you can leverage the possibility of thinking of him as your future starting quarterback. He's not going to be a
True.
starting quarterback in the NFL in my mind. His arm just doesn't have the mustard in my perspective to be on that elite level. I just don't think
Yeah,
it's
but
going to happen.
can he manage a game? And with Mike Tomlin behind you, I mean, they won with Mason Rudolph. They won with Mitch Trubisky.
Sure.
Granted,
Yeah. Yeah.
they didn't
You
win
could win.
anything.
You could win with very little. I mean,
Right.
you had a team that was sandbagged with really poor quarterbacking. And I think if people are like, hey, Kenny Pickett was a guy that they thought could be the dude, he threw
Right.
for 6 touchdowns and 4 interceptions, and he played in 12 games. I
Right.
mean, it
Yes.
doesn't get much worse than that.
No.
So, as much as people want to rag on, especially here in Chicago, the naysayers that don't like Justin Fields, he did
Right.
a lot more than that. I mean, can you imagine if he threw for 6 touchdowns, how people would be reacting if those were his numbers?
Oh,
I
the
mean,
vitriol would never end.
it's terrible. So to me, when I
Yeah.
look at a guy like Kenny Pickett, he's already proven he can't be a starting quarterback in the NFL. Like he's basically Mitch Trubisky, maybe even worse. To be
Yeah,
quite honest,
he may be.
He might be, and they had to play him because he was their young guy that they thought could be the
Right.
future. But you took
Right.
a swing and a miss. I all for it. It happens.
Yep.
Not to he sounds like a lot of guys we could talk about, dudes that have athletic ability, that have so much potential, but just don't ever have the possibility of realizing it.
Which
to me is why I think Russell Wilson would be the guy to go for if you're going to go for somebody.
Yeah. Well, it makes sense in Pittsburgh because of where they draft. I mean, the conversations about Atlanta fascinate me. You partner him with Drake London and Kyle Pitts and Bijan Robinson. But if I'm Atlanta, does that really solve something when you're still 3-4 years away? I mean,
yeah. There's so much of this still comes back to our hometown. What do the Bears do?
Right.
What do they do? And the funny thing is, for all this chatter of where Justin Fields might go and for how much or how little in this case, everyone's now downgraded him to maybe a second round pick, which is horrifying when you hear that. A guy that still, to me, has so much ability, and you're casting him away for a second round pick. To me, that just screams of, are the Bears really going to pull the trigger and do that? Do they really want Caleb Williams that bad?
Right.
And I just love the scenario after all of this talk, after all of this, crazy kind of monkey business that people are throwing out of this trade, that trade. Let's jump this way. Let's jump that way. What if they did nothing and they literally just took Marvin Harrison with the first pick and just built around him?
It feels more and more like that. Not that that's necessarily possible, but it seems within the Bears realm of possibility. And that's where Ryan Poles today, paying Jalen Johnson what he did.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully we're not talking this is, standard operating procedures, not signing Jalen Johnson, but it feels like we've gone away from who the Bears were for so long. And maybe now they are moving in a direction, and I pray, right, as a Bears fan, I pray that's what it is. So it will be interesting to see what happens with Harrison. And again, Chicago, at least Justin Fields, becomes kind of a linchpin in some of these other moves. Maybe not so much Cousins, but Russ Wilson. I mean, if you're talking Russ Wilson potentially to Pittsburgh, potentially to Minnesota, potentially to Atlanta, I guess potentially to the Raiders, which there's no way Justin Fields goes there. But it feels more and more like what happens with the Bears and Fields and that number 1 pick might have a little to do where Russ Wilson has the greatest opportunity to start, or does he become a backup somewhere? Does he end up being given a shot?
So. I think he'll be a starter. He'll be a starter wherever he goes, at least for the year.
Yeah.
Now, again, if they draft a young quarterback behind him, then he's on a year's lease. That's it. You've got 1 year. You're going to do whatever you can do with this team in a year, and hopefully, if you play well enough, you keep your stock high enough that another team that needs that 1 year, maybe 2 year quarterback can come calling. Hey, let's put it this way. Basically, Tampa Bay, right? You have a guy like Baker Mayfield who's granted a lot is younger, right, than Russell Wilson. But even looking at him, it's not like they're necessarily looking at him as the franchise. It's you'll do right now type of
Yep.
guy. That's what a team eventually is going to need. And there's going to be plenty of teams in that positions where they strike out on a quarterback. They need a guy that can step in, be a starting quarterback that will have decent production, will throw over 20 touchdowns, won't have massive double-digit interceptions, can
Yep.
manage a game the right way to get them some wins and keep them alive. To me, that's who Russell Wilson is at this age. At what is he, 35 at this point?
Yeah, 35.
Yeah, 35. I mean, really, that's all he's going to pretty much have to piece together the rest of his career. And let's
Yep.
talk about the ceiling of that career. Maybe 3 years.
Yeah, maybe 2-3 years as a potential fill starter. Maybe he extends his career out that extra fourth, but that
Man,
doesn't make sense to me at his
no.
age. Um,
I
I
say you
think,
give him 3 good years, and that's his
yeah,
NFL livelihood. He
yep,
retires at the age of 38 and goes off into the sunset, and
yep,
all's good. You know, had a
it,
good career, won
yep.
won won a Super Bowl. You
And,
know,
and, and maybe he ends with 50,000 yards passing. Right now he's a 3-1 touchdown to interception ratio. Maybe it sticks around there. And, you're looking at his career and going, hey, the guy had a wonderful 15, 16-year career. Kudos to him, way to come out of Wisconsin, and play incredibly well. But
mm-hmm.
to your point, maybe it's that twilight where we're starting to say goodbye to Russ Wilson.
So before we end here, I'm going to throw out 2 scenarios, to the 2 most likely to me that I think happen centering around where Russell Wilson goes. So here are my 2 scenarios, my
Yep.
predictions. It's going to be one of these 2 things. The Bears trade Justin Fields to Atlanta. Justin Fields goes to Atlanta. That means Atlanta doesn't need a quarterback. That means when you're talking Kirk Cousins, his options are limited because Atlanta was then talking about being hot on Kirk Cousins. Where does
Yep.
he go? I don't really care where he goes, but maybe he stays in Minnesota for the year. Maybe he doesn't.
Yep.
Bottom line is Pittsburgh needs a quarterback. He goes to Pittsburgh in that scenario. There you go. Now, the Bears keep Justin Fields. It's maybe a slim chance. I don't know. These are all slim chances.
Right.
Well, then you have Kirk Cousins, I could see becoming a Falcon. That could open up your potential to going to the Vikings. But even then, the Steelers still need a quarterback. So it really becomes his 50-50. Where do you want to go at that point? Either way, I guess when I'm talking this out, I think he's going to the Steelers no matter what.
Yeah. It is the one that seems to make the most sense. You're going to go there and win because that's all Mike Tomlin does. Or at the very least, you're going to go over 500. You give yourself an opportunity to play for a city that if you play hard, if you work hard, you don't turn the ball over, they're going to respect you and care about you. Yeah, it certainly Pittsburgh feels like it, makes the most sense. I still like that Minnesota idea, but it is amazing to have to watch the Bears and Justin Fields to figure out where maybe dominoes start to fall, where Russ Wilson can find himself in an optimal position. It's fascinating. So
if you're playing roulette, prediction, I say he goes to Pittsburgh. What's the most likely one for you?
I think Pittsburgh's most likely, but I think Minnesota is the most fascinating if Kirk Cousins moves on. I think that is an interesting one. They take a flyer on a young quarterback, see what they can build. You've got some offensive weapons there in Minnesota. Maybe that's something they can try. But to your point, I think Pittsburgh tends to make the most sense. But again, the NFC North plays a huge role in all of this, or at least specifically the Bears and Kirk Cousins. So
here's the beautiful thing. Next time out, we're not even sure what we're going to talk about. And I'll bet you the next time we talk, our next episode of Dads of Football, it's going to be something wacky happening in the NFL that hasn't been written yet. But I'll bet in a few days, something else is going to drop that grabs our attention.
I can't wait.
Until next time, make sure to like, subscribe. We'll see you then.